Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Boob Talk with your host, Cynthia Rogers. It's Season 3. Come and join the Boob Talk family as we discuss the issues breast cancer and other cancer survivors face. Come along on our journey. We are survivors.
Welcome to Boob Talk. I'm your host, Cynthia Rogers, and thank you for joining me this evening. As we all know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the emphasis over the years has predominantly been on women's breast cancer. October 7th was International Male Breast Cancer Awareness Day, and many may not be aware of that, but men get breast cancer too. Tonight, our guests are from the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. Brett Miller, founder of the coalition, Ron Rappaport, coalition advocate, and Patricia Washburn, global advocate. Welcome to Boob Talk, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So glad you could be here with us this evening. So I wanted to say, and be completely honest, that I was ignorant in knowing that men get breast cancer. I didn't hear about men getting breast cancer until the actor Richard Roundtree from the Shaft movies I used to watch back in the day, when he revealed that he had breast cancer. I think it was in 1993, and that was the first I'd ever heard about a man having breast cancer. I mean, I barely knew about women having breast cancer, but it was just a complete shock to me when I thought a man can get breast cancer too. So I just want to thank you for being on the show here to spread awareness about male breast cancer. So, Ron, let me just start with you. What is the Male Breast Cancer Coalition?
Okay, so the Male Breast Cancer Coalition is an advocacy. We are an advocacy group, a nonprofit advocacy group, and we are advocating to the world that men have breast tissue and that male breast cancer does not discriminate. We are 1% of the total breast cancer cases worldwide. For some reason, South Africa is actually 2%. In the United States, approximately 2,600 new cases per year are diagnosed, and we lose approximately 500 men a year to the disease. Now, people may read about this disease, and in some places it's said it's an old man's disease. It is not an old man's disease. Male breast cancer doesn't discriminate who it attacks, all ages, all races, all colors, all creeds. More men die from male breast cancer than testicular cancer. Testicular cancer has 10,000 cases per year that are diagnosed, and they lose 400 men a year. And we'll talk about why that is with us. The chances of a man getting male breast cancer is 1 in 833. It's up from what it used to be is 1 in 1,000. So it's going up. A good amount of the men are diagnosed at stage 3. And one of the reasons for that is they waited too long to get it diagnosed. It could either be because of stigma or embarrassment. It could be a misdiagnosis, or it could be, in many cases, just ignorance to the fact that men get breast cancer. I can't tell you how many young men I have come in contact with and taken to the side and said, hey, have you ever heard of male breast cancer? And they look at me like I've got 3 heads, and I don't know what I'm talking about until I give them the information, and then they're very thankful they got it. Check men's breast tissue for the most part. It just isn't done. And if you can catch it at stage 0, 1, or 2, the survival rate is very high. It's in the 90%. If it's stage 3, it drops down to the around 72%. And unfortunately, if it's too late, you get a stage 4 where it metastasizes, and spreads to other parts of the body, then you're talking about a 5-year survival rate of around 20%. Now, there's a few populations that we need to talk about. One of them is the Ashkenazi Jewish population, and that's Jewish people with Eastern European descent. 1 in 40 men and women carry the BRCA1 or 2 gene mutation in that population. That raises the risk of getting male breast cancer to 6% in their lifetime. And it also raises the risk of developing ovarian cancer for women and prostate, pancreatic, and melanoma for both men and women. We have to address the Black and brown community. A JAMA oncology study determined that Black men have a 61% higher mortality rate than white men from male breast cancer. A higher percentage of Black men die than women to breast cancer. Triple-negative breast cancer, which is very hard to treat, is 2 to 3 times the rate of whites. The Black and brown community tend to get it earlier, and it's more aggressive. Also, 1 in 5 men with male breast cancer will have a close relative, male or female, with the disease.
That is alarming news. I had no idea of the stats on that. So I also wanted to ask you then, what are the signs and symptoms? Are they the same as they are for women?
I would be glad to jump in on that, Cynthia.
Yes, go ahead, Patricia.
So basically, it is the same as for women. When I talk to the guys, I tell them that they need to be doing the self-exams every month, just like the women are doing their self-exams. And basically what they need to do is they need to feel for lumps. And when they check their breast area, they also need to include the collarbone and also underneath of their arms, because we all have lymph nodes in those areas. And so they need to be feeling for lumps. Now, the lumps can be large, they can be small, they can be as tiny as a BB or even smaller. They can be hard, they can be soft, they can be stationary, they can move. If you find a lump, it shouldn't be there. And, you know, it may be an inflamed, it may not be anything to worry about. However, you at least need to get it checked out. So once they check for lumps, the second thing I tell the guys is when they get out of the shower, just to look in the mirror and compare sides. Do they look approximately the same? You know, none of us are exactly the same, but do they look about the same? Is one side swollen? Do they have a red spot? How long has it been there? Do they have a dry patch of skin? How long has that been there? If they don't remember how long it's been there, or if it has been there very long at all, they need to have that checked out, because that is not normal. The third thing, and this is actually the one, as I am talking to our men, this is how a lot of our men have actually found their breast cancer, and that is by their nipples. The nipple has become inverted rather than being erect like it's supposed to be. It maybe has started pulling inward. And, you know, as you think about it, if there's something on the inside of the breast that is growing, it could cause that nipple to pull inward. And with a lot of our men, that is exactly how they realized that something was going on and why they went to a doctor in the first place. The fourth thing is any kind of drainage from the nipple. This should never happen, male or female. And if you have a drainage, it might be just a tiny drop. It might be blood. It might be clear. It might be milky. this should not be happening. If you have any of those symptoms, you need to be seeing a doctor right away. And, we always tell people you are your own best advocate. If you really and truly feel like something is different in your body and it hasn't been there before and you want to have it checked out, if you go to that first doctor and they brush it off and say it's nothing to worry about, don't worry about it, and you will hear a story from one of our guys, where they're told everything is fine. If you really and truly don't feel good about it, get a second opinion, get a third opinion, get a fourth opinion. This is your body, and you are the only one that can go ahead and take care of yourself. So, and they may not have any of these symptoms. The ones that I told you about are the most common. Definitely, they are not the only symptom that a person can have, but they are the most common. And if there's ever anything that feels odd in your body, get in and see a doctor.
Definitely. Now, Patricia, I wanted to ask you, how did you become involved with the coalition?
Well, actually, my husband was diagnosed with breast cancer in December of 2016. And he, was like so many of our men. He did not believe that men could get breast cancer. He was a very smart man. He was a high school educator for 41 years. And he was, very knowledgeable. He read all the time, but he had never read anything about men getting breast cancer. And so he did have a lump on his breast. It was right under the nipple. And it wasn't brought to my attention until we were in with the oncologist. And I asked him how long he had it. And he said, I don't know. I don't know if I ever even noticed it before. He was a man that had lipomas, which are very common in men and women both. And a lipoma is just a non-cancerous fatty mass. It's felt under the skin. And he said, if I ever noticed it on my breast, thinking that men couldn't get breast cancer, he said, I would have just assumed it was another lipoma. Now, the one thing that he did have pain with, and again, we were able to convince ourselves that it had nothing bad to do with his body. He had pain in his arm and his shoulder. And he was an avid golfer. He was out on the golf course. He would play 27 holes every morning, Monday through Friday. And he had a lot of pain in that arm. And as it turned out, when he finally went to the doctor, he was also diabetic. And when he finally went to the doctor, they did his A1C test, and his alkaline phosphatase was elevated, and that is a liver enzyme. And they told us that, it could be his gallbladder, it could be his liver. One test led to another, and then 10 more. And it turned out that the pain in his arm was because the cancer had metastasized into his bones. He was diagnosed stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and it had spread from the breast. He had 6 lesions in his liver. It had metastasized into both lungs. It was in his lymph nodes. It was in his bones. And he had 8 tumors in his brain. And we didn't realize anything was going on because he acted the same. There was a little shortness with him that I had never noticed before. We were married for almost 23 years. So anyway, his story was that they hoped to give him 5 months. He had been a smoker since he was a teenager. At that time, he was 66 years old. And so instead of they had hoped to give us 5 years. And instead of getting 5 years, we had 5 months. And he passed away after 5 months. He and I both realized that a lot of our family and friends did not know that men could get breast cancer. And, I always thought to myself, I would assume a man can, but I honestly didn't know a man that had breast cancer. So when he told me, well, it's not like I'm ever going to have breast cancer, I believed him. And then after he was in the hospital and so on, we decided we needed to do something to bring the awareness. And I sadly was not able to find the Male Breast Cancer Coalition at the time that my husband was sick. And so I took his car after he died, and I had a wrap put on it. And I started going to the communities where Marlon was a teacher and a high school principal, and asked them to get me in the newspapers, asked them to get me on television. And some of these stories got picked up by the AP, and Brett's co-founder is actually the one that found one of our stories on the internet and saw the picture of the car, and the Male Breast Cancer Coalition contacted me and asked if I would be willing to join up with them to try to get the word out about male breast cancer. So that's my story. That's what I do now. I travel the country and I try to spread awareness about our men and the fact that, yes, they can get breast cancer.
Patricia, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that can't be easy, and my condolences about the loss of your husband, but I also just want to thank you for having the courage to share your story and to help bring awareness to help save others.
Thank you so much for allowing us to do this.
You're welcome. And you mentioned Brett, and so I wanted to talk to Brett, who is the founder of the coalition, the Male Breast Cancer Coalition, and ask Brett, how did the coalition get started?
So the coalition, it all goes back to when I was diagnosed. I was 17 when I first found my lump. I was going into my senior year of high school. I was just at home. I was watching TV, and I kind of did a lean back, like stretch and scratch across my chest, and I came across the nipple, on my right nipple. I felt this lump directly below it. I had gone to two different doctors that year, and they both almost said the exact same thing, is that being a calcium buildup, you're going through puberty, it'll dissipate, it'll go away, it's nothing to worry about. So this is in 2003, 2004. And then, and it wasn't until I was 24 is when I was officially diagnosed. So everybody was asked, what's the reason for the gap? Why did it take so long? I was in college. My parents were self-employed. We didn't have health insurance. So it wasn't something that was really bothering me. It was just something that was there. It wasn't until about a year and a half or so before I was diagnosed that I actually started having some issues with it. I was having a discharge from my nipple. It was like a yellow orangish color. It was slightly red sometimes, but it only would discharge if I bumped up against something or if I actually squeezed it. I didn't tell very many people about that. My parents knew about my lump. At one point I know I did tell my dad, and after he kind of heard that, within a few days or so, he had asked me, when was the last time I had been to the doctor? Had a physical, and I was like, before going to college, so about 7 years. And I had been at my job that I'm still at for a little over a year. I had health insurance, but I didn't use it much unless I had like a cold or a cough or something like that. There wasn't anything major in my mind that should cause me to have to really go see a doctor or do anything, because the discharge, all I thought, just logically thinking, I was like, oh, well, it's probably, it's the calcium buildup just dissipating. It's just, as the doctors had said, and that's kind of part of our issues, that we've seen in males, is that we try to figure out ways not to go to the doctor. Ignore it, push it off, say it's not that big of a deal, unless something's like life-threatening, like really life-threatening right there, like, you know, your limbs hanging on by a little bit, you know, things like that. That's when we go. Other things like
Why
that,
do you guys
nothing.
do
You know,
that?
rub some dirt on it, walk it off, you'll be fine. You know, so my parents are the ones that forced, and encouraged me to go to the doctor, go get a physical, just get a checkup, make sure everything's well. And my mom was like, don't forget, bring up the lump. Don't forget about that. You know, you know, being a female, you know, you're not gonna do it, and you're gonna have to ask for it. So I go in, I get the blood work. The doctor does the physical exam, and he's like, you know, everything looks great. You know, we'll wait till the blood work comes back from lab within the week, and we can go over anything from there. But I don't see anything, you know, wrong right now and stuff. So until we get those labs back, you know, see you later and stuff. And he was almost out the door before I stopped him to say, like, oh, hey, doc, before you leave, I've had this lump under my nipple for, you know, give or take 7 years. And like, he closed the door, turned right back around, walked right over to me. And he goes, let's see this. And so I kind of looked at my shirt, and he looked and felt it and everything. He immediately set me up for a sonogram, which then led to getting the sonogram, going into the women's clinic. Unbeknownst, I did not know that's where I was going. While I was there, then led to a mammogram, then led to get the lump removed, because the meeting with the surgeon and the scans, what it said, just go, you know, for the time you've had it, let's just take the lump out, you know, just be on the safe side. And he's never once saying breast cancer or anything regarding that. He's just saying, just take a lump out just on the time you have. Well, the next day is when I got the call from him that it is breast cancer. I haven't fully read the pathology reports, but I'll get to them and get back to you in 3 or 5 days.
Wow.
And that was that. There was no like come in or do anything. We met with him. Didn't like what his answers were. Got a second opinion. Got another doctor, who's a great doctor, great surgeon. And it was in talking with him and knowing that he had performed the surgery on a dozen men before. They took time off work, did the surgery, recovered, went back like nothing ever happened. And that many men won't speak about it. But he thought and saw something in me at my age and diagnosis that if I was willing to share my story, that he thought that I could have an impact and be a face of male breast cancer. And this is coming in this very first meet and greet with this doctor within 30 minutes. And just hearing that from him, taking everything in, within a week of meeting with him and the surgery, the mastectomy's coming up, and that it's at that point is when I kind of, you know, looked at my parents and I told them, I was like, we've got to change something about this. We have to start, I have to start speaking out. I have to, you know, and I'm willing to do it. I don't care if people go, you got breast cancer, you're a dude, that's not right, you got a female disease, whatever. I don't care. I'll show them the scar and be like, this is what happened. But you need to know your body. You've got to be your own best advocate. And you've got to say something, because after reading the stats, if you wait too long, you brush it off. I got extremely lucky. I tell everybody.
Yes, you were very blessed. Yes.
My surgeon told my mom the morning of the surgery, he didn't tell me, but she told me the next day, that he prepared her for it to be everywhere. He goes, for the time that he's had it, there's a very good chance that it could be everywhere. So I just want to prepare you for the worst right now. Luckily, it had not spread. It had not gotten to my lymph nodes at all. So I got extremely lucky. So from that, that's where we started originally the Brett Miller 1T Foundation. And our goal was to go into the local high schools and colleges and speak to the youth, both the men and the women there, but focus on the men and just make sure everybody, you know, be aware of your body. If you feel a lump, say something. It doesn't matter where it is, what it is, say something. Go to the doctor. If they try to tell you something wrong, but you feel that it's something else, go get a second opinion, third opinion, or so on. Mm-hmm. And don't stop until you're comfortable with the diagnosis. And then from, you know, we had the Brett Miller 1T Foundation going for a while. Sherry Ambrose reached out to me through Facebook, but we weren't friends. So at that time, in 2013, when she reached out, it goes into my spam folder. So I never saw it. I never knew there was like a spam folder on Facebook. And she thought that I was just ignoring her. She thought that I was some hotty-toddy, mid-20s guy that just didn't care and whatever. And I was like, I never saw the message. And her and my mom got connected. We ended up meeting for however it happened, I don't remember, a Susan G. Komen race that we went down to Oklahoma City and we met another survivor there. And, and then just in as all of our talks and discussion and her dealing with breast cancer of one of her male friends and just seeing the discrepancies for men compared to women, we just knew we had to change something. So in 2014, Sherry and I, under the direction, my mom's the director, we co-founded the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. And as our goal was to ultimately become a global, just a safe space for men to support them, to advocate for them, to get them the right treatments. We don't have all the money in the world. We don't really have a whole lot of money, but we will do whatever we can with our resources to help men out not feel alone when you hear the words, you have breast cancer, as I did when I got diagnosed. So we're here for the men. We want everybody to feel welcome, to know that it's not embarrassing or emasculating. You have breast tissue, you can get breast cancer, because that is what it is affecting. And it's not a men's disease, it's not a women's disease, it's a people's disease. And until we can get the big pink society, pharmaceuticals, and everybody to understand that it's a people's disease, I don't think that's when we can make the progress that we really need, because everything out there says women, and it's pink, and that's how everybody relates it. But if you can change an ad and show a male in it, you say men, you air it during a football game where all these men are watching it, and you include them, the impact that we could have on that and the change that we could get would be astronomical, I think.
I think so, too. I'm just sitting here blown away listening to your story. I just can't imagine 7 years you had breast cancer and you didn't know it. So just what went through your mind when they told you have breast cancer? How did you deal with that?
Originally, I thought at the time, so the show Punk'd was on MTV, I think, still, or was just on it and stuff. Yeah. I thought I was getting punked. I thought it was a joke. I mean, the doctor, you see everything on TV and stuff, and like a major diagnosis, sometimes doctors are like, hey, you need to come in, we need to discuss. Then again, they say that, and you're thinking 1,000 things. You're like, oh, my God, I'm dying tomorrow. But he didn't ask if I was, like, sitting down or anything. He just straight up just told me. And the fact that he would read the report and get back to me in 3 to 5 days, it sounded like 3 to 5 business days. So I'm not working on the weekend. I'll talk to you Friday next week type thing. But I hung up the phone, sat there in my car for a little bit, just kind of thought about it. And I was like, well, the lump's gone. What the biggest things out of it? So what more do I have? And just kind of was just like, all right, check it off, think about it. I called my dad. I let my dad know. And I was like, hey, I'm leaving work. I've got to go work downtown for my second job. I was like, please don't tell Mom. I was like, I don't have the answers to the million questions that she's going to ask. I know I'm going to go down. I'm going to be busy. I won't have time. I think 5 minutes went by, and my mom calls after I asked them to just like, wait till I get home. We can sit down, discuss in person, and go from there. It was ultimately the better thing, because just to say, she called and just ripped that doctor, because I signed all HIPAA paperwork for him to call and discuss everything. His response into why he didn't call them or let them know, oh, he's 24 years old. He's a male. He's an adult. He can deal with this.
Wow.
I was 24 and I got diagnosed with a female's disease where everybody says this is an old person's disease. The average age being 60 to 65. And that's one of the ages that the stats that I don't think is correct, or at least they have not updated it, because we know many men in the 40s and some in the 30s and everything. So it's just, I think that the age is wrong and everything, but it was just like, it doesn't matter how old you are. You're diagnosing somebody with cancer. Right. If they ask you to share the news with somebody else as well, you should respect that and do that. And it was ultimately part of that. His bedside manner was just absolutely horrible. And we were just like, all right, no, see you later.
Well, thank God for your parents. Thank God that you knew that this doctor was not about doing the right thing and that he was probably basically sounds like he didn't even care, so that you were fortunate enough to find another doctor that did inspire you to start the coalition.
Yes, and he was the best. Since he just retired this past year, but he's helped so many people in so many ways.
That's wonderful. Now, Ron, I know you are a breast cancer survivor. Would you like to share with us your story and how you found out you had cancer?
Sure. So, in the fall of 2018, I noticed that my left nipple was greening a little bit, which is what Pat described as one of the symptoms that is common. And I had fallen that year. I had had influenza B, and I was completely dehydrated, and I got out of bed one night around 2 a.m, fell down, got back up. My wife got out of bed. She said, "Are you all right?" And the next thing I know is I stood up, and she said I did a complete flop, and I just fell on right over, just like bricks coming down. And she started shaking me, and she said, "If you don't answer me in a second or two, I'm gonna call 911." Well, I never answered her. Next thing I know is 911's at my house, and they started checking me out. I vaguely remember it, and they stood me up, and my blood pressure went down like 65 points. And they said, "Oh, okay, we're taking you to the hospital." So they took me to the hospital. I cracked some ribs. It was all messed up in that left chest area.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So by New Year's Day of 2018, it got a little more pronounced. So I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, take a look at this." And the first thing out of her mouth was, "Oh, you're going in for a mammogram."
Wow.
So I went to my GP wasn't in the office. It was like Christmas time. So I went to like a doc in the box, but I knew the guy real well, and he wasn't like a run-of-the-mill doctor. He had a very good history, and he had been a doctor for many years. And so I went in there, and I took my shirt off. He said, "What are you in here for?" And I took my shirt off, and he goes, "Well, what am I looking at?" And I said, "Well, take a look at my nipple." And he goes, "Oh, I don't think it's anything, but we can get it checked out if you want a mammogram." So anyway, he gave me an order for a mammogram, but it wasn't the right order, and I had to go back to my GP because my wife wanted me to go to the imaging center, the big one, because that way they have a radiologist on staff and they can check it out right away. So anyway, I go to make an appointment to do the imaging center right away, like a couple of days later, and that was my first experience being what we call a blue dot in a sea of pink. And what I mean by what I mean by that is I had to fill out forms like when was my last menstrual period,
oh, goodness.
When was my last pregnancy, and all that good stuff. And of course the pink robes and everything. So anyway, they gave me an armband, and they called me up by my last name. So I went up there, and the lady goes, "No, we need your wife." And I showed her the armband, and she said, "Oh, okay, we're gonna have to get you a room." So that was, so when men talk about the stigma, the embarrassment, yeah, there's stigma and there is embarrassment because you're the only guy there for the most part, and you're just, it just is what it is. So anyway, I got into the mammogram room, and first thing out of the nurse, I don't know why she asked me, she said, "Are you Ashkenazi Jewish by chance?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, oh, you have a higher chance of having breast cancer. I said, oh, okay.
She said that?
Yeah, she said that. So
oh, my goodness.
They did the mammogram, and the right chest was fine. So the left chest which is the one where the nipple was inverting. They said, we don't know. We're going to give you an ultrasound. They put me in the next room. By this time, my wife's getting a little anxious. And, I just said, hey, I'm sure it's going to be all right. So they did the ultrasound. They said, okay, we're going to have the radiologist come back in a few minutes, and then they'll go over everything with you. Well, a nurse came back, not a radiologist. The nurse says, she showed me the X-rays, the ultrasound, and she said, we really don't know what it is. We think it might be a calcium deposit or scar tissue because you had that fall and everything. We need to do a biopsy. So a day later, I did the biopsy, and that's when my GP called up with a preliminary report, like first thing on a Monday or Tuesday, and 8 o'clock in the morning or 7, whatever it was. And he said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but they've diagnosed you. The preliminary report is coming back cancer, and I was diagnosed with infiltrating ductal carcinoma of the left breast. I did a genetic test. I had no BRCA mutations or anything like that. So anyway, it was like getting hit over the head with a sledgehammer. And so now I'm really studying up on male breast cancer because, I've got it. And I run across the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. And I said, well, that's interesting. There's actually other men out there like this. And I sent in the email to Peggy, Brett's mother. I didn't know it was going to her, but it was going to the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. And like 30 minutes later, I got a phone call, and she said, Ron? I said, yeah. She said, I'm Peggy Miller, Male Breast Cancer Coalition. I just want to welcome you to the family you thought you never had.
Oh.
And she said, we're here for you. We love you. We're going to be with you. And, so that was very comforting. And then they sent me a little care package with a recovery shirt for my mastectomy operation. And so I had surgery set for February of 2019, February 8th, about a month later, is when they set it up for the mastectomy. But right before the mastectomy, I was having some dental work, and I'll tell this story. I had to have a crown put in, and they didn't want me doing dental work before or after my mastectomy. So I told the dental office, I said, hey, can you kind of rush it a little bit because I'm having cancer surgery on February 8th, and I really need that crown put in. They don't want me to have it done after that. And they said, yeah, we'll do the best we can. So they called me the day before my mastectomy surgery, and I went in there, and the technician sat me down, and she said, hey, I understand you're having cancer surgery tomorrow. I said, yeah. And she said, what kind of cancer surgery? And I said, breast cancer. And, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was malicious. I don't know if she just was ignorant to the fact. And she started laughing. And it was like a big joke. And she said, oh, you're joking. And I said, oh, no, I'm not joking. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, I don't know where I am, what stage I am, or any of that kind of stuff. But if I make it out of this, in one piece, I'm going to advocate for, the Male Breast Cancer Coalition, because men shouldn't have to go through this, and people should know that men can get breast cancer. So that's how I got in. That's how I got involved with the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. I had the surgery February 2019. I was lucky. I caught it early. I was only stage 1A. They did a study on the tumor, and they came to the conclusion that there was such a low recurrence rate that chemo and radiation were not needed. They did put me on an anti-hormone pill, tamoxifen, for 10 years, which I'm taking. But the moral of the story is catch it early. The guys listening to this, the women listening to this, you need to tell the men out there, like everyone said previous to me, you have to be your own best advocate if something doesn't seem right. And check your breasts every month. You have to catch it early. That's the key. So, yeah, that's my story.
Thank you so much, Ron, for sharing that. What was your mindset when you were told that you had breast cancer? Did you think it was real? Did you think must be a mistake?
No, when I was reading about it, the odds were 1 in 1,000. So I was going, I was just thinking, this is probably a scar tissue or a cyst or something, but then it was always in the back of my mind after that, it could be the real thing. And when I did get the word, I was pretty much in shock, and I was picturing myself, laying in bed with a bald head, kind of emaciated, the typical picture people have of cancer patients. And, so it was tough, but I told myself that I would be strong and get through it.
Well, we are so glad that you are here with us, Ron, to share and bring awareness to male breast cancer that, as you said, a lot of us, including myself, had no idea that men could get breast cancer. So now I wanted to ask you, what programs or initiatives or resources does the Male Breast Cancer Coalition provide?
Sure, I'll be glad to answer that. We have a lot of programs and initiatives and resources. We've only been around 7 years, and I think for 7 years we've come a long way. We have a brother-to-brother program for our newly diagnosed men where we match them up with someone who's gone through a similar path that they can talk to. We started a virtual support conversation group that meets monthly for all the men in the United States. And we have a virtual support conversation group globally where we actually start the meetings at all kinds of weird hours so we can get all the men in on all the continents. And that's going quite well. As a matter of fact, when we started the global meeting, an offshoot of that was our brothers in Belgium came up with the idea of October 7th as International Male Breast Cancer Coalition Awareness Day, and came up with a logo, and we took it and we ran with it. I think I sent you a picture. I'm not sure, but
yes.
So we've been spreading that all over the internet, and that's done quite well. We just started a patient and caregiver support meeting, a virtual meeting. We work with researchers to include our men in studies. We speak in schools. We go to churches. We go to radio shows, TV shows, podcasts like these to share our story and spread the word. We partner with many, many cancer organizations throughout the world. We lobby for more funding for clinical trials and research. We also attend conferences to educate ourselves from experts in the field. And what our really main resource is our website, www.malebreastcancercoalition.org. And on there you'll find survivor stories, links to resources, our downloadable breast self-exam card, videos. Brett's made a really good video on how to do a proper breast exam on yourself. We also have medical resources where we refer our men to if needed. And we have a medical advisory board. And we actually have worked, I believe Brett's been very active in getting some of those imaging forms changed in some of the hospitals. So it's not all that pink stuff and all those, questions that don't apply. So, that's pretty much what we do as far as initiatives and resources and programs.
That sounds like you're doing amazing work. And I know we were talking briefly about how there has been more emphasis on women having breast cancer than men. So I wanted to ask, what do you think needs to be done for that perception to change, and what goals are you trying to accomplish as it pertains to advocacy? And anyone can.
I don't have a problem asking that one.
Go ahead.
It kind of goes back to a little bit, like I said when I was talking earlier and stuff, is that it needs to. I don't know that it's a color change. I mean, we always say, add a splash of blue and a sea of pink. And Ron's, pink dot or blue dot and everything. But it's the perception that it's just a women's disease, and it's always because everything is stated women, women, women. If we are able to get men added to the verbiage and or change it from women to people, they get diagnosed, a person that gets diagnosed with breast cancer, because that's what it is. It's not just a one person, one gender disease. And it's the advertising. It's the the iBranch commercial, they finally they don't show it on their commercials, but they do say men or women diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. That was in part with our work with them, because we've advocated for our men to be able to receive the iBranch drug for treatment because it has helped them. We had one male that was denied it because it said women only, and we, with the help of, of everybody, we wrote iBranch, or we wrote Pfizer, and we wrote the insurance and the pharmacy that denied, that denied it and stuff, and they actually hand delivered it to him within a few days of us reaching out to him. Social media and social media has been a great thing, but it's really just changing the perception of what it is, because if you do that, then you actually get men paying attention to it. You save their name, you call them out in a commercial and stuff, and they actually pay attention to it. Rather than you see, they're like, they start talking about breast cancer and they say women and stuff. Okay, well, that doesn't pertain to me. Turn around and walk away. It's really just that's part of the bigger thing, but it's ultimately also getting included in to clinical studies. And the FDA changed that, I want to say, at least a year, maybe almost 2 years now. With COVID and stuff, it's kind of turned everything to a blur, but they changed it that you have to include men in all breast cancer clinical studies from now on. And if you don't, you have to have a very, very good reasoning why you're not including men in this study. And that kind of, so we've made that headway. We've changed, like Ron said, the forms are going into a women's clinic because, yes, I got those same exact things in 2010. When was your last menstrual cycle and are you pregnant? And I didn't know how to answer those besides just no. So we've gotten those changed where a lot of the centers, at least, HCA Midwest has changed. They have one strictly for females. They have one for men, and they have one that's just non-gender specific. So, making those changes is definitely what's going to help the perception, the awareness, and the knowledge of breast cancer.
I think those are wonderful things that can help change the perception. And lastly, I just wanted to ask each of you, what advice would you give to our listeners about male breast cancer?
I can start that off. I would say know your family history regarding cancers. And I would tell everybody out there, go to our website, www.malebreastcancercoalition.org. Know the signs and symptoms of male breast cancer. Check your breasts monthly for abnormalities. And once again, be your own best advocate. If there's a concern that arises and you're not happy with the answers you're getting from your healthcare provider, get a second or third opinion.
Yep. I concur everything that Ron just said, and do your monthly self-exams. As a male and as a young male, you have to worry. You also have to think about testicular cancer. So as long as if you're doing a monthly check for that, do a breast self-exam, and you have, just like they tell women, you have that one day at the beginning of every month to do an exam. Always do it, and don't miss it, and do your exam. And if you find a lump, go say something.
And Patricia, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I was just going to jump on a little bit of what Brett said before when he was thinking about the patients, etc. A lot of our men are finding out that their insurance companies are turning them down for one thing or another. And it has to do, like Brett said, with all of the advertising, and it's all directed at the women. And I guess I would like to say, if anybody is listening to this, if we have any men that are dealing with breast cancer and you're having issues with your doctor listening, with your insurance company listening, I would really encourage them, get a hold of the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. I'll tell you what, these people, Brett's mom, his co-founder, Brett himself, these people know what they're doing. They know how to get something done. I wish we would have had them at the time that Marlon was sick. I didn't know about them, but I cannot say enough about the Male Breast Cancer Coalition and what they have done for so many of our men. You have two amazing men on this call right now, that as far as the age spectrum, they kind of reach out, they kind of cover everything. When, Ron was talking about, the Ashkenazi Jewish population, that is a population that needs to especially pay attention to what's going on. Our black and brown population, we're finding out those that were out around New York at the time of 9/11. We have a lot of different populations that the average person may not be aware they are at risk. And the Male Breast Cancer Coalition they are aware of all of this, and they know who to talk to. I can't say enough good about the Male Breast Cancer Coalition. I'm honored to be on this talk with these two men because I can't think of anybody else that I'd rather be on here with. So my parting comments are just, if you have any questions, get a hold of the Male Breast Cancer Coalition and tell them what's going on with you, and they will help you through it.
Thank you, Patricia. And I personally just want to thank each and every one of you. You have amazing stories. I want to thank you for your courage and for your advocacy and spreading the awareness about male breast cancer. And I know you are making effective change. So hopefully I'll have you back on the show. If you want to discuss anything new with the coalition, I'd be more than happy to have you on the show. And I just want to thank you again for coming on the show this evening.
And thank you. Thank you as well.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to Boob Talk, and I'm your host, Cynthia Rogers. Once again, a special thank you to our guest tonight from the Male Breast Cancer Coalition, Brett Miller, founder of the coalition and breast cancer survivor, Ron Rappaport, breast cancer survivor and coalition advocate, and Patricia Washburn, global advocate. I want to thank them again for spreading awareness about male breast cancer, sharing their stories, letting us know that we can change things, we can make a difference, and let us be mindful that breast cancer does affect men, and help us spread the awareness. Until next time, God bless.
You have been listening to Boob Talk with your host, Cynthia Rogers. Follow us on all podcasting platforms and on Facebook at Boob Talk Podcast Group and Instagram at Cynthia L. Rogers Boob Talk Podcast. Remember, never give up hope.